Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining my podcast number 8. This is one of my special ones that I do usually a couple times a year. I've done on my social media page. It's my story. It's going to describe my life and path from addiction to sobriety. Um, Stories are like them all out there, but my story is, it is my story. I'm going to talk about a few things before I get to my story. I cut out a few things from the American Addiction Center.org. Some things to remember. We all know someone that fights from this dreaded disease, and it is a disease. It's kind of like cancer. We know somebody that's struggling with it. And the number I'm going to be using a lot tonight, okay, is 3%. That's the total success rate for all chemical addiction. Excuse me, I had to take a sip of coffee. That number pretty much stinks. That counts every chemical addiction out there. That counts prescription pills, heroin, fentanyl, alcohol, you name it. That's the total percentage of recovery. Very low. I'm lucky, trust me, and I know that. I'm very humble about it too. Some of the stuff I got out of the American Addiction Center, and then I'll get into me and my fight with addiction. And my poison, just so you know, was beer. I started with hard alcohol, and I'll get into that. Causes of addiction: genetics, including the impact of one's environment on gene expression, account for about 40 to 60% of a person's risk of addiction. Also, environmental factors that may increase a person's risk of addiction include uh, chaotic homes, environment and use, parental drug use, and attitude towards drugs, peer influences, which is a huge big one. Think about it. That was part of mine, and I'll get into that. Remember peer influences, community attitudes toward drugs, and poor academic achievements. Think about it when you're using back then, getting bad grades for sure. Demographics and impacts: age, adults age 18 to 25 are the most likely to use addictive drugs and alcohol. Economic costs. This is crazy right here. When I saw this, I had to do a double take. Substance misuse, including alcohol and illicit drugs, costs the United States over $700 billion a year. Absolutely insane. Treatment and recovery. Treatment gap. While over 54 million people needed treatment in this is 2023, only a small fraction received it, which is crazy. There's a lot of people out there that are struggling with it, a lot of people that aren't getting help for it, a lot of people that go in and fall off the wagon. Recovery in 2024, approximately 31.7 million adults, 12% reported having ever had a problem with drugs or alcohol, with 74.3% of them considering themselves to be in recovery. Understanding how many Americans struggle with addiction, inform better policy, increase access to treatment, and reduce stigma. Most importantly, it reminds those affected that they're not alone, and you're not alone. It's nothing wrong to admitting that you have a problem in anything in life. It doesn't make you less of a person to say that you're weak. You're not weak. The first step is admitting that you've lost control, and that's a big thing. Drug and alcohol use can be scary. What's more frightening is when you're the one battling it. Trust me. I many a times said I didn't have a problem, and I did. I had a problem all the way back in high school. And the classic thing I used all the time was, I'm only going to have a couple, or, oh, I'm going to control it. Doesn't work that way. It's important to remember that substance use disorder doesn't discriminate, doesn't. People from all walks of life, regardless of age, gender, race, cultural background, or socioeconomic statuses, can experience addiction. It doesn't discriminate. It could take the most successful person in the world to the most unsuccessful, whatever. I'm just going through that. Recovery is possible. Trust me, it's possible, and I'm a living example of that. And getting the help you need is the first and most important step towards reclaiming your life, health, and your future. Perfect example. We go into alcohol, and then I'm going to go into my story. In 2023, an estimated 28.9 million Americans aged 12 and older, remember 12, because I'm going to tell you the age when I started. It's going to blow your mind. Battled an alcohol use disorder, or 10.2% of this population. Over half of all American adults have a family history of problem drinking or alcohol and addiction. It's a gene. My grandfather had it. It can skip generations. And there are people that sometimes say it's not a disease. Those people are just clueless. And I'm going to say it right out loud. You're just clueless. You don't know what you're talking about. It is a disease. It's a proven fact. Over half of American adults have a family history of problem drinking or alcohol addiction. Around 10.5% of U.S. children, 75 million, live with a parent with alcohol use or disorder. I was one of those parents, got divorced. My son was a living experience of me having an issue. And I'll get into that story too. An estimated 88,000 people die from alcohol-related causes annually. Alcohol is the 5th leading cause of preventable deaths in the United States of America. Now, I said earlier, the success rate's 3% for all chemical addictions. That includes alcohol, cocaine, heroin, prescription drugs, marijuana, fentanyl, you name it, 3%. Don't have to tell you it sucks. Bottom line is you find there's plenty of addiction treatments out there. There's more now than there was when I was around. I'm going to get into my story about AA. It did save me, but it also almost made me drink again. Now we get into my story. Before I get into it, as you see across the screen here, you can subscribe to my YouTube page. You can see all my other podcasts on my YouTube channel. If you want to come on with me, I have the chat going right now. I'm going to put the chat comments in. I can see it on my studio. It's in my YouTube page. Subscribe to my YouTube page. Also, if you want to come on with me, there's the bottom of the screen. I'll keep it there. I'm going to get the YouTube part out of here now so you can see me while I go through the whole story. So just bear with me here and let me get that out of the way. There we go. So my story, when did it all begin for me? Remember, I gave you an age bracket of 12, right? I had my first drink at 10. That's right, 10 years old. Summer of 1977. I broke out of my shell. So I'm going to get into that as well. I always talk about this to get to me, and some of you know this already, to really get my attention is when you make fun of somebody and also make fun of addiction. You will always get my attention. As a kid, I was picked on up to 5th grade, went through all that stuff. Drinking was my way to get accepted in the summer of 5th grade. I can tell you where I had my first drink, who was with me, and what we were doing. It's crazy. It amazes me. I talked to friends from back home who knew I had a drinking problem back in high school. I remember everything. It's crazy. All the partying I did and all the drinking I did. I remember stuff. Like even with my music and stuff and certain songs, I remember certain people and all that other stuff. And I'm a really nostalgic guy. So I think it's cool. I still have that memory. But some people are like, man, George, you remember all that stuff? I do. My first drink, friend of mine's house. We used to play football. We made this garage upstairs. It was into like a locker room, right, during the day. We played tackle football in the backyard, connected a bunch of yards. It was like almost like a 50-yard field. During the day, it was a locker room. At night, it was a party room. My first beer was a Genesee Cream Ale. Now, understand, back in the day, I have a lot of older cousins. We were allowed to drink at family functions, and my parents allowed me to do that. Not saying it was right, wrong, or indifferent, but I was allowed to. It wasn't an issue. My parents allowed me to do that. Drank all through high school. My drinking was heavy liquor back in high school with beer. As I got older, the beer became my best friend. That was my poison. That's what I drank. There were so many times, and this is going to sound familiar to so many of you. There were so many times I used to run down the stairs and wonder how the hell I got my car home. Crazy stuff. And then when I got older, a little bit, about 18, when I would call for my parents and say, look, I'm staying over somebody's house, my father knew what I was doing. He knew darn well I was drinking. This is a story, how I met my ex-wife. This is a classic example of how I was. I was a very impatient person. I was supposed to be going to a party with a friend of mine. It was in my hometown. My hometown, you understand, Hatboro is a mile square long. You could walk to just about everything. So he was supposed to pick me up. And if he's watching this, he's probably laughing right now because he remembers the story. It was raining, so I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait. So I got my father's car. My dad used to buy these big ass cars, like Cadillacs, Chrysler New Yorker. He had a Chrysler New Yorker that I had this night. So I decided to go look for this party. Now, I knew the development was in, but I didn't know specifically what house. It was in an apartment place. So it was behind my elementary school. So this apartment place was, you backed in, there was a creek going all the way around the whole area there. So I had this big ass car and it's raining. So I'm pulling in to the last area. I start backing out and I hear this. I'm like, what the hell was that? I open the door. There's the creek water running. I'm halfway in the creek. I'm standing in the creek. My friend pulls in, right? My best friend pulls in. He's in there with two other people. And the person goes, hey, well, I'm not going to say his name. So blah, blah, blah. Look at that guy in the creek. And my friend goes, oh, and they said, look at that asshole in the creek. And my friend goes, oh, that's George. That's who we were supposed to pick up. So the party happens to be right there where I put my car in the creek. I was like the sideshow. Now, who came to pick me up was, look, everybody knew me in my hometown. I worked for the township. I worked for the pool. So everyone knew me. It was a small town. We all knew each other. A mile square long. There was two elementary schools. We all grew up together. So we generally all knew each other. So one of the police officers knew me. They all knew me, but the one I went to high school with saw me. They got me out. They got my car out. They knew I drank. They told me, walk home. They gave me a huge break. I got many of those when I got younger, but my luck ran out as I got older. So I got away with that one. I seem to always get away with them because my best friend's father always bailed us out. He was the head of the Republican Party in my hometown, head of the Republican Party in my county. And every time we got in trouble, me and my friend, we did the most stupidest goddamn things in the world. Dumping empties at a 7-Eleven dumpster. What the fuck are you dumping empties at this? You're drinking and you're dumping empties at a 7-Eleven dumpster. One time we supplied the police in Southampton with a party. My friend and I was having a party in my house. We were lifeguards at the community pool. We picked up some alcohol to have a party. I had the 3 best cases of beer in the car. I remember this day vividly. He's driving, both underage. We get pulled over. Cop sees the beer, writes us up for underage drinking. Of course, they take our cases of beer, and I'm looking at my friend, I'm like, oh my God, they're taking our cases of beer. I mean, I had Molson, I had the premium beers. It was crazy. I remember that. So as I got older, look, I kept drinking. Started getting the tickets, and finally, didn't learn from that. Then I got married, still drinking. Then get divorced. Then this is where I go into a total tailspin. I got out of control. I mean, I was out of control in high school. I got even worse. I wound up getting 3 DUIs, which is crazy. I got them in like boom, boom, boom in succession. The one you would have thought I would have learned from that one. Worked all day as a car salesman in Horsham. I used to go to this club off a street road in Ben Salem every Friday and Saturday night. I would drink. I went to the club that Saturday night. It was a hot day. Had ate pizza. Left the place. Of course, I was drinking. Stopped at a Wawa, get a sandwich. If you're familiar with Street Road around Lincoln Drive, right before the Turnpike and Route 1, there's a light there. I left that Wawa, pulled out. Next thing you know, I wake up. My car is just smashed to smithereens. I'm bleeding. My airbag is. What happened? I hit. If you ever see one of those bed liners that carry one car and the metal thing is right at the windshield, I hit one of those. If I didn't pass out going to the passenger side, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I would have been decapitated. I remember trying to start my car. I get out of the car. I'm bleeding. The police officer gets there and asks me, how the hell did you get out of that car? I said, well, I just opened the door and got out. Next question he asked, you've been drinking. And these are exact words I said to him. I said, I am shit-faced. Now, took me to the hospital, did my blood level. I was almost, no lie, I was well over the alcohol blood level. It was like almost double. It was double. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. I didn't learn from that. Okay. Now, prior to that, I forgot this. I went into rehab. I went into rehab to save my ass from going to jail. Um, what happens was I went in rehab prior, right before that, for 2 weeks under insurance. And I want you to remember this as I get further into when I went to my rehab for the last time. Insurance, health insurance, will only keep you in there for 2 weeks. You don't get dry in 2 weeks. So when you go in with insurance, they try to get you in and out of there very quickly. And in my opinion, it's bullshit. I didn't learn anything. I knew I was going to get out again and drink again. No doubt about it. So time goes by. I'm drinking. I'm getting to the point now. I'm drinking 840s a day. I'm now going to get to the story of when I finally went into rehab. I had done anything you can imagine that an alcoholic could do, a partier could do, I did. I hung out at places. I went to clubs. I went to strip clubs, gentlemen clubs. I spent, no lie, in those places almost six-figure income. I thought about it one day when I got sober, and I'm like, you dumbass, man. And I talk to you guys, a lot of you that are retiring right now, and I even joke with some people about, hey, look, I'm going to be working forever. I am. Seriously, the way that I spent my money frivolously on alcohol and partying was a goddamn joke. It was a joke. Seriously. Insane. It was absolutely insane. At the end, I was drinking 840s a day. I'm going to get to that now. Most of us go to a bar. We went to a bar. Most of you drink 12 to 16 ounce beers, right? Now, my sick head, right? I couldn't have my thought was, I'm not going to get a six pack. That wasn't enough for me. Now, I couldn't have a case of beer in the house because I would drink all of it, and I did. I couldn't have a Kegmeister in the house. Remember the Kegmeisters where you took the old refrigerator and you put a keg in there with the little thing in the. There's no way I could have that in my house. I'd be drinking that like I'd be drinking like water. So my sick mind was, I'm going to get 40s. What are 40s? They're the big bottles, 40 ounces. Back in the day, we used to do the 40-ounce Colt 45s in the beer meisters, chug-a-lugs with the tube and the oil thing. Had those many times at parties in my house. So I would drink 40s. Now, living in Philadelphia at the time, right, where we lived, the Italian market, there was a deli that was on 9th in Washington. I'd go get my 40s there, or I would go the 10th and Pine, which was a few blocks away. I rotated both of them. So at the end, I was drinking 840s a day. Do that math. I was barely getting buzzed. That's sick. 8 times 40 is 320. Divide that by 12 or 16. That tells you how many equivalents of 12-ounce beers I was drinking and the equivalents of 16-ounce beers that I was drinking a day. Now, I was a functional alcoholic. Let's be real here. When I was working, now the last couple months of my run, I was out of work. Most of this time, I'd work all day. I'd come home. I would eat a little, but I would drink and pass out at my house and then get up for work, go to work, and do the whole cycle over again. It basically was another job, to be honest with you, if you really think about it. And I go back to those days, just nuts. So finally, a lot of stuff happens. Enough was enough. So the day I stopped, I was kicked out of my house. Police were at the house. I had been to jail a few times. Trust me, I've sat in county. I've sat in Montgomery County Jail for 3 days. I've sat in Bucks County Jail for 2. Still got out, still drank. The last run was it. I was basically told to leave where I lived. Police showed up to the house for 2 nights. I had resided on Kensington Avenue on a cardboard box in the rain. If those of you from Philly that know where Kensington Avenue is, I was right near Kensington and Allegheny. And that is like unreal there. Okay. Probably told my mom that 2 years ago. She just cried. She knew exactly where that was. They're going to have a sip of coffee here. I then cut off ties with people that I partied with. So I started going to see people and basically said, look, we're done. We're done. So eventually I got to the day I was ready to go into rehab. I was staying at a friend's house. There was a lot going on at his house, and I just knew it was time. It was time. So I remember getting really, really drunk the night before, waking up the next morning, calling um, to get myself into rehab. Now I had to call, right? Um, Philadelphia. That's where I resided. So I had to call, and I wasn't working. So this is where I'm going to go from regular insurance to what saved my life was Medicaid. And with Medicaid, tell you what, it's almost like they got a bat phone with the rehab facilities, which is crazy. So I wound up calling. They asked if I can get to Philly, and understand, I wasn't driving. I had no car because I totaled it and lost my license. Um, I became the king of mass transit, and for a certain amount of time, I was driving without a license. Um, just crazy. I mean, as recently as 3 years ago, that's how bad it was. I am finally, when you finally get your license and you are truly a real human being, okay? Try driving without a license when a police officer's behind you. I did every trick in the book, pulling into a Wawa, pulling over. I did that for such a long time. And I'll tell that story of why I did that too. I had lost my license for 8 years when I got my last DUI because they gave it to me like combination into one. Now I got it in Bucks County, which I got lucky because if I would have gotten my second and third DUI in the county that I grew up in, I would have served 90 days in jail. Okay, I know that's in New Jersey. In Bucks County, I was able to get house arrest, which was a gift. Was a gift. And my two probation officers knew me from broadcasting Central Bucks West football, from broadcasting. They never checked on me at no time until my last probation officer who knew me came the night before I was coming off of my 90 days of house arrest. He came and showed up, literally looked at me and goes, "I can't believe you're here." I said, "Why wouldn't I?" He goes, "Oh my God, I never checked on you or anything. You could have gone out." I told him, "Why would I go out? I should be in jail, house arrest, and I'm going to go out somewhere." I was home. I was able to go out in the backyard. I was able to play basketball, or I was able to go to work. I never, ever took advantage of that. And look, I had numerous run-in with police officers. At no time, with everything that we see nowadays, did I ever disrespect a police officer. When they gave me a directive, even when I was drunk, there was yes, sir, no, sir. And if they asked if I was drinking, I said yes. They told you when I crashed my car, I told the police officer, "I'm drunk as shit." At no time I ever gave a police officer a hard time. And they all knew me. They all knew me. And a lot of them gave me breaks. I got to be real about that. So my last day of drinking, I go into the neighborhood of Philly. I get down there. I had taken the bus from Doylestown to Philly. I go into the neighborhood because I had to go eventually to where the detox was near Temple University. And that'll be more of the story. I go down to where I get my 40s. I get a 40. I'm walking down 9th Street at the Italian market with my 40 in a bag, drinking in the bag. I'm literally walking down the street in the middle of the day. I'm not caring. I mean, when you are in the midst of your addiction, you don't give a shit about anything. You don't care about the law. You don't care about nothing. You don't. You're in another world. And I'm walking down the street with a 40 in a bag. And I'm drinking it. And this is no joke. I had, if you remember the Flintstones, remember the Great Kazoo? I had one of those on my one shoulder and another one on my other shoulder. One telling me, "No, don't stop drinking it. Everything's fine. You got this. You got this." Another one saying, "You're done. You're done. You're done." And I'm doing this, walking down the street. I'm like, this is crazy. So I had to get on to the Market Frankfurt L. Those of you familiar with Philly, the Market Frankfurt L runs across the city, where the subway runs like from north and south to the stadiums, and the Market Frankfurt L runs east and west. So I had to get on the Market Frankfurt L and go to Burke Street. Now, those of you from Philly know where Burke Street is. That is in the heart of the hood. So I'm taking the subway, the Market Frankfurt L, to Burke Street. I have my 40 in my hand. I have my bag. I'm sitting there. I remember just looking out the window and just you're scared. You're like, all right, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? I get to the stop. I get off at the stop. And the next thing that happens is my 40 drops out of my hand and splatters all over the metal steps. Now, this is the moment I knew, excuse me, I was fucked up. I got down on on all fours like a dog and started licking those metal steps with that beer. I stopped. I was bawling my eyes out. I was like, "Oh my god, you are so messed up, man." I get up, teared, and get my bag. I walk down the long steps. At the corner, there's a bar. I walk into the bar. Now the bartender knew. I mean, the detox right around the corner. Saw my bag. This is your last one. I said, "Yep, my last one." My last beer was at Coors. It was a regular Coors. I had a Coors. I was nice and buzzed. Walked out of the bar to the detox. Now, you get in, you check in, and you put your bag in a locker, and they put you in these. They were hurt worse than hospital gowns. I'll remember the elastic. The damn pants kept the elastic kept just. The knots would break. I had to get new pants all the time. They took you up this elevator shaft up to, I think I was on the 8th floor. They get you there. I had some food. I remember them getting me in my room. They put me on some medication so I didn't have convulsions or anything like that. You know, when you try to stop drinking on your own, that's a no-no. I used to do that all the time. You could have a convulsion. So they gave me this medication. I had the most whacked out damn dreams with this medication. I remember waking up in the middle of the night hearing people screaming and yelling. Understand, I was in a detox in the middle of the hood. A lot of people were coming in for their methadone fix for heroin. I was hearing people screaming, yelling. I remember the first night I woke up, I was on my hands and knees saying, "God, get me out of here. Get me to the rehab I will never touch again." Now, I was at this place for 5 days because they got you all set up. At our meetings, every day we'd wake up, have breakfast, and sit in this hallway for hours on end and talking. It was crazy, the stories I was hearing. A lot of these people in for heroin, oxycodone, and I'm hearing the stories, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like Mary Poppins here. And I told them this, and each of them looked at me and said, "George, we wouldn't want your addiction." I go, "What are you talking about?" They said, "Alcohol is worse than any addiction that we have because it's in your face all the time. And especially that you like sports." And I started thinking about it. And I said, look at the billboards. Look at the delis that are every corner that you can get alcohol at any time. It's in your face all the time. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, wow, you're not kidding me. You're right. You're absolutely right. So I was in this place for 5 days. I then went to the rehab, which now this rehab, okay, understand, I had no insurance. This was all set up through Medicaid. And I could have been in the place that I went to for my rehab. There was 3 levels of it. There was inpatient on the first floor. Second floor was halfway house. The third floor was like living regularly, like renting an apartment. This place was set up. It was just set up. I was there for 2 months. 2 months. Now, when you go in, right, you sign stuff. You put 3 names down. I didn't want anybody to come see me. I didn't want anyone, but I just put names. I just put whatever. I remember putting my ex-girlfriend, late girlfriend. I remember putting my son, and I put another friend down, knowing I don't give a shit. They're not going to come. So every Sunday it was visiting time. So I would either go back to my room. I'd watch the football game. They had a TV. They had a TV in the main area where we had our meetings and so our group meetings and everything else. It was one Sunday I go back to my room. I get a knock on my door, and someone tells me somebody's here to see you. Now I'm like, who the hell's here to see me? It was a young man. The young man was my son. Now, when I do these, I try to stay composed as much as I can. And trust me, I tear every so often. And this might be a moment where I'm going to tear. At no time in life should your kid come see you in a rehab. This is when I knew. This is when I started thinking to myself, "You are truly a piece of shit. You are truly a piece of shit." Um, Now, I forgot something here before I get to the story of my son. My son, prior, and why I was still drinking and living in Philly, this could tell you how fucked up I was and how much I was so in the midst of my addiction. He was in a rehab. Now, I would go see him once a week at this rehab for parent stuff. So I always went up there drinking. I would get in my car, drive up 95, drinking the 40, I'd get in the parking lot, go in. So once I get the call back after visiting from one of his counselors asking, Mr. Romali, your son was really upset. He thinks you were drinking. Of course, I lied. I said I wasn't drinking. Now, my son and I talked about that day after I got sober, and I told him the truth. I said, I was drinking every time I come to see you. Of course I was. He goes, Dad, I knew you were. I go, I know you probably did. I lied. That's what you do. That's what you do when you're in the midst of your addiction. You lie, cheat, steal, you do everything. Your integrity's at the fucking door. So when my son came to see me in rehab, I got to tell you, that was the worst. I mean, I talked to him, and it was like I felt like this big. Have him there. Now, what happened was my counselor had contacted him. He thought it was a good idea that my son come and see me. It actually was a good idea, in my opinion, as time went by. I just remember just feeling that big. Now, I talked about when I went through some of the statistics and stuff earlier in this podcast about it doesn't discriminate. We had the best group therapist out there. I have to tell you, he was awesome. And he always said, it doesn't matter when, man, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care who the hell you are. It doesn't care if you're black, white, whatever, Republican, Democrat, whatever, or Jewish, Catholic. This will wax your ass every time. It's 1,000,000-0. He wasn't kidding. 1,000,000-0. He's exactly right. 1,000,000-0. And I'm one of those statistics. Then I got out of the rehab. Eventually, I came down here. If you all remember 2010, that big snowstorm on Christmas night, yes, I came and stayed at the Belmar Inn. I did my homework and knew in the wintertime, a lot of people stayed there and you had to be out of there by May. So I stayed there. But the big thing was I had to promise my counselor and them at the facility that in order for me to leave early, I knew a snowstorm was coming, right? And I told them, look, there's a snowstorm coming, and I think it's best that I leave early. Now, they were really concerned because I had told them I had never gone to Christmas without drinking. I always have. I mean, when I was married, family functions on Christmas Eve was food, and I was drinking. So I had to promise them that I would go to meetings as soon as I got there. That as soon as my bag was unpacked, I was at a meeting. Now, I was doing that the whole entire time. I went to 4 meetings a day in the very beginning. AA gave me the foundation, and I will never, ever rip AA. I won't do it because it gave me the foundation to who I am today, my sobriety, and gave me from learning from rehab, it solidified my mechanisms of dealing with certain things that I had to deal with. So one of my last full-time, I said to you, AA almost made me drink. Now, at the time, okay, and I still believe it to this day, and I was told that there are different types of programs because my thought process about addiction is this. What may work for me may not work for you or another person around the corner that's an addict or has an alcohol issue. Now, I always thought there should be multiple methods of recovery. And I found out in the last few years there are, and I think that's great. I mean, I gave you guys the number. The recovery rate for all chemical addictions is 3%. That blows. It tells you how many people are failing for whatever reason. And trust me, there are people that are dying from this. I don't have to tell you that. I'm sure you all know of someone that's struggling with this or know people that have passed from it. I know a handful that have passed from it. It sucks. 3% sucks. And my addiction, alcohol, is so accepted, right? It's crazy. It's all over the place. We have a Super Bowl coming up, right? I love sports. We're going to see commercials, beer commercials all the time. You see billboards all over the place. It's advertised everywhere. So I get out of rehab. I'm here. and I come here because I figured no one knows me, this part of Jersey. Um, I couldn't have survived in Pennsylvania because I partied everywhere. I did a lot of damage everywhere, and there would have been no way I would have survived the first year. Now, the first year is a bitch. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a bitch. Because you're adapting to life, you're adapting how you're going to live, how you're going to function, how you're going to eat, and that's important. Now, I was at 250 pounds when I went into rehab. They had told me when they checked my body, right? Um, my body was eventually going to shut down. Something bad was going to happen. Now, I forgot to get into the story of when I got to rehab, and I'll jump back to this. What they did when I first got there is they do a self-evaluation of you, and then they sit down with you and they go through, what's your deal? What made you start drinking? I just said, well, I just started drinking. No, that didn't cut it. They wanted to know the underlying cause. So I went through this, and they weren't going to let me leave the room until it came out. And I went through the first day where I was sitting there, and time went by. I went to dinner, came back the next morning, right? And went through the whole process again. They wanted to know. Eventually, I finally broke down. I was in a puddle of tears. What would cause me to drink? Look, some of us have grown up with some different lifestyles and some tough parents and everything else, and that happened to come out. Love my dad to death. Let me just say this to you all. When I drank, I wasn't scared of nobody. And I joke with you about, if I was a drunk now in today's world, I would have been shot about 5 times. I didn't care. When I was back in those days, I was able to take care of myself with my hands. And the toughest guy, the only person in this world that I was ever afraid of when he was healthy, was my father. And I sit here now. I'm sure him and my grandmother are up there looking down, very proud of the fact that I'm sober for 15 years. November 3 was my 15-year sobriety date. Guys, I was a mess. I'm just telling you a little bit of the story. The stories are just the shit that I did, people that I hurt. Look, I always talk about it's water under the bridge, and it is, but you can never forget where you were because you don't want to make that mistake again. And I was tested. I'm going to get to that test. Now, one of my last AA meetings, I stood up. I told the proctor, look, I did people, places, and things, and I still go to places where people drink because I like the environment and I like watching sports. Now, this guy that did this meeting did a no-no. Walked up to me, told me I was going to fucking drink again. I look at him, and I'm going, what the hell did you just say to me? He goes, you heard me. I put my hands up. I said, you people are fucking crazy. I turn around and I begin to walk out of the meeting. I grab from the behind. Guy did another one of my meetings, proctor one of my meetings, grabbed me, and his words stick to me to this day, and they were the best things he could have said to me that night. He said, George, stop for a second. Give me 5 minutes, and you can go. He goes, let me just say this to you right now. What he just said to you was uncalled for. Understand something. I can't go to a bar and hang out with people that can drink, but remember this. It's your sobriety. And also remember this too. Each day that you wake up, ask for another day. Each day that you go to sleep, thank you for that day. Now, I don't get too religious on my social media. I'm talk about other things in my social media, which I'm trying to take away some of that a little bit. But those were the best words he could have told me that night, because I was pissed when that guy told me I was going to drink again. So about a year later, me and my friend are at Clancy's in Ocean Grove, owned by Kelly's. We're sitting at the bar eating lunch. I turn to my left. I start cracking up. My friend next to me goes, what's so funny? I go, remember the story I told you when I was at one of my last AA meetings? and the guy told me I was going to drink again. He's sitting right next to me. He's 3 chairs down. So my friend goes, "Why don't you go over there and tell him who you are?" I said, "Who's drinking now?" I said, "No, you can't. You don't do that. You just don't. What you do is you pray and hope he figures it out, because you know what? That could be me. You don't do that." I just prayed for him, because it just, the success rate, it's a struggle, man. It's a struggle. And I saw that. I'm not going to sit there and say that's karma, because I don't wish that kind of karma on anybody. Okay. Addiction is a tough thing. I lived through it, and I'm just lucky. Um, and I say this, it's like anything in life. If you want to change who you are as a person in your relationship, you want to change your career, or you want to do something different, or you just it's in between your ears. Look, no one tied me to a chair, right, and poured alcohol down my throat. I did it all on my own. I created that disaster of a lifestyle that I had for myself. I created the problems that I had. I created the DUIs that I got. I created everything. Okay. Even the relationships that I was in, or friendships I was in, the way I acted in those was all me. Um, but the thing is, with alcohol and drugs, it can turn a really good person into it's Jekyll and Hyde, and that's a term you all probably have heard before. So this is some of my story. I wanted to have a little bit of a podcast here with it, describing my story a bit. My goal in life, and people ask me I should be a speaker or whatever, is if my story gets to somebody, because we all know somebody. I've done these on social media where some people have hit me up and have had stuff going on in their own personal life with whoever. Look, I'm not a doctor. Okay. I can refer people to professionals that do this for a living. I can tell you my story. I can tell you what I think. They're opinions. They're not professional opinions. I didn't go to school for it. I'm a live example of someone that lived through addiction. Um, I'm clean and have a story. Um, if someone out there is struggling, please, you can always contact me. I will refer you to a professional. I know people that do this for a living who I trust, will steer you in the right direction. Please understand, it doesn't make you weak to admit that you have a problem. Um, it was the best damn decision I could have ever made in my life. It saved my life. Um, I'm lucky. I'm extremely humble. People tell me I should be proud. Look, it's my life. You know, it's my foundation of who I was reborn November 3rd, 2010. That's how I look at it. 15 years and 3 months it is. I think February 3rd was 15 years and 3 months, because May 3rd will be that's a half a year mark for me. And that's May 3rd is a huge day. And I'm going to get into that, and I'm going to let you all go. The one time that I possibly could have fallen off the wagon, and many people thought I would, was May 3rd, 2020. Those of you who are close to me know what that day is. Many of you know 2020, what that was. It's heart of COVID. It's the day Judy passed away. There's one woman that was with me when I drank at my most ugliest time in life and came back to me after I got sober. The night she passed away, all I wanted that night was a cup of coffee. And if you all remember, a lot of places were closed. But if I wanted alcohol that night, it was all over the place for whatever reason. Okay. I know what I was told, what it is, whatever. If I really wanted alcohol that night, I could have gotten it like a snap of a finger. I remember 7-Elevens being closed. All I wanted was a cup of coffee. Finally found one. I remember people contacting me, making sure I was okay. You know what? All those people that did, I love them for that. I never got angry with them, because you know what? That's a life experience that if you are an addict, that you could fall off the wagon. At no time did I ever think about picking up. There's no way. There's no way. I could never go through another detox. I could never go through another goddamn rehab. And I've told a lot of you this that came to my party that I had a few years ago. If you ever saw me with a alcohol beverage in my hand, get me on a goddamn boat, take me out 200 miles, and dump my sorry, pathetic ass overboard. I'm a swimmer. I may swim 50 miles back, but I'll just sink to the bottom. I never have a desire to pick up again. It destroyed me. It destroyed people around me. I lost everything. I didn't lose one thing. It was my life. I came close. That's the only thing I didn't lose was my life. Lost everything else. Um, I'm just blessed. And I know people say one day at a time. Look, I get that. I get that. Understand something here. I don't want to ever touch it. I'm around you guys. I have more fun now when I go out and people watch. I tell you what's amazing when you go out, and I'll let you guys go. When I go out, it's entertaining watching the progression of the night go by. When a person has their first drink to maybe 4 or 5 hours later when they're probably like 4 or 5 in, and seeing the personality change, that's entertaining to me. I sit there and go, oh my God, I was like that. So, what I'm learning in life right now are the gray areas. I'm finding out I'm like my father, which is good, bad, and indifferent. I have a lot of his things that were embedded in me growing up with regards to who I am as a person. How some of you think I come across angry. Nope. Don't want to see me angry. Don't. I'm just really, come from a different angle when it comes to trust with people. And that's what I'm learning. What I'm learning 15 years in is the gray areas of life. Because when I partied, there was no middle. I have, it's all or nothing. You know what I mean? That's how I was. I partied my ass off. Okay. There was never a middle. In life, there's a middle, there's a gray area. And I'm learning those gray areas. It's been difficult. Trust me, 15 years in, I'm still learning. I still have character flaws like we all do that I'm trying to deal with every day. But, it comes with just depression. I got into that earlier with you guys. I didn't get into that yet. I'll do that another time. Where the seasonal depression that I'm dealing with was bad in 18. I deal with every winter, sometimes more than others. That's the thing. I have mechanisms to deal with it with. So that's what they taught me in rehab with the chemical addictions that I had. They give you the tools to deal with things. And, I'm glad that I rekindled relationships I had back home. The people that know me real well probably knew that I had a drinking problem when I was in high school. I've gotten back stuff that I lost. The thing is, when you become sober and you go penance and you're like ask for forgiveness, I didn't really get anybody to tell me to go fuck myself, which I'm really lucky. So that's my story. I hope it helps some of you out there that maybe dealing with some issues in regards to addiction with alcohol, or someone it is. Please, it doesn't make you less of a person to say that you're weak or you need help. I respect it more if you came and went to somebody and said, I need help. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't make you a weak person. Thank you for watching tonight. I hope there was some information in there that helped you out or gave you some more education about addiction. And I was just talking about alcohol. But the other stuff goes hand in hand with alcohol too. It's the same dependency, the same basic, things that occur with you when you're an addict with drugs or an alcoholic. It's a chemical addiction. That's the bottom line. So I want to thank you all for watching, listening. You'll see in the bottom here, please subscribe to I put that out earlier, to my YouTube channel. Also going to let you guys know, I'm going to have another guest in February. I have the person solidified. We're going to finalize the date and time next week. When I finalize the date and time, I will let you guys all know who it is. You will definitely like it. Like I said, when you guys saw me do it with Eddie, that's how I'm going to do it. It's a relaxed atmosphere. That's what a podcast is all about. It's like you're sitting across from somebody in your own home, in your living room. You're just having a conversation. And that's what it's about with me. and you saw how comfortable Eddie was. That's what I want to do with whoever's on with me. Make it really comfortable and enjoyable. I also want you guys to contribute too. There's always going to be in the bottom of my podcast. If you want to come in with the podcast with me live, you just connect into the StreamYard link. There's also chat sessions and YouTube. I see it come across my board here. I have that all connected. You can always contribute any way you can. So you can also see the replay of this on my YouTube channel if you subscribe. It's important that I get subscribers, because I'll tell you why, and I'll let you go. When you get viewers, YouTube gives you other benefits, which will help me out with my podcast. So I would appreciate that, guys. Okay. So have a great night, and cold weather's coming this weekend. I'm not liking that. So thanks for listening. I'll talk to you guys soon. I love you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.